Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we've got a very special guest. Her name is Sara Kelsey, and she's a survivor of chronic illness, and her life's been shaped by major surgeries, daily gastroparesis symptoms, and years of living with a permanent feeding tube until a miraculous turn of events changed everything. Her journey stretched far beyond the medical side. She's walked through deep grief, complexities of foster care and adoption as a parent, financial collapse, and seasons marked by destructive drinking cycles that affected her marriage and own sense of stability. Wow, Sara, you've got quite a story to share here. Let's jump into it. Welcome to the show. So glad you could join us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, I when you reached out, I was like, wow, that sounds like the perfect guest for our audience. You know, this is all about healthy living, and it seems like your journey has touched on many layers of that, both the downside and the upside. So why don't you just jump in and tell us a bit about your backstory? It sounds like you've got quite a quite a robust story to share.
I definitely, that's a good way to describe it. And essentially, it all kind of has a tendency to tie together because when I was 17, I was diagnosed with a digestive disease, and that really would carry on. Um, it was called achalasia, and I had surgeries on my esophagus, and it would carry on into my 20s, and I would have continued chronic illness and vomiting, which would lead doctors to ask questions about eating disorders, for example, things that you might see in a normal teen, early 20s girl, but that wasn't the case with me, which led to new issues such as depression and anxiety, which turned to unhealthy habits like binge drinking, pushing into relationships that weren't ready, and looking so hard for belonging that I was getting married very young, getting married to people that it wasn't the right fit, but it was a fit for someone who was lost in every area of their life. And so I was just looking for an answer to fix all the things, right? Because everything was basically falling. I felt like my health falling apart made everything else fall apart. And really what I was doing was making it worse by compounding drinking on top of having these gastrointestinal disease.
Yeah, those two don't seem like they would go very well together.
No, it certainly was not doing me any favors at all. But by the time I met my current husband, I was still having daily, which that was 12 years ago. And so at this time, I was still having daily nausea and vomiting. In 2018, I was diagnosed with something called gastroparesis, which meant from my stomach issues, my stomach had become paralyzed.
Oh no.
So food was just sitting in my stomach and not emptying. So that meant a whole new lifestyle change as far as what I was eating. And essentially what happened was my quality of life went downhill. I was not keeping things down. I was doing very poorly, and they, in 2019, put in a feeding tube for my quality of life. I needed it. I was grateful for it, but it was also a mental load. It was something that it was a big weight to carry because it's a lot to deal with, figuring out the feedings, figuring out how you adjust with that in your body, how you live your day-to-day life. And I kept it in until 2020, and they let me take it out because I was doing better and I wasn't using it. But then I got sick again and they put it back in. And that time they told me, this is it. Even if you stop using it, this tube stays in. So
So your stomach starting to repair itself, or what was going on there?
there are like, with gastroparesis, you can have like a flare where your stomach will completely paralyze, and then those nerves can kind of, their nerves aren't like completely dead. They can, every once in a while, they will start again, right? Like
Okay,
they aren't cut, they're just damaged.
got it.
So they can, on occasion, work. It's just,
So would you just like get hungry, or I mean, like, how would you know that it was starting to work again?
I would continually try to eat because it was just, honestly, it was mentally hard for me to not do it. It was just something that I struggled with mentally, not eating. Um,
Oh, I can totally imagine. I recently faced a radiation treatment for my cancer that I decided against. And one of the reasons was because I was going to end up being stuck with a feeding tube. And I was like, no, I'm not going to live that way. And I chose another path that fortunately worked. But I can totally appreciate that, that's a whole world that unless you
yeah,
have to, you don't want to go there.
so I essentially knew that if I would eat, I would vomit, at the end, but I could use my tube and still get the nutrition that I needed. So
Oh,
there was no harm done if I ate.
okay.
I just needed to make sure I got my calories, essentially. And so
You
I
were
would,
going to eat, but it was going to come back out anyway. So you got to
right,
kind of have the joy of eating, but you weren't going to get anything out of it.
correct. But somehow mentally that was more satisfying to me because it wasn't what a normal person thinks of a bomb. It's not like the flu. It's
Right.
just a very quick, it's back out.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, so then they put the tube back in 2020, and that's when they told me that no matter what, this can't come back out just because you've had so much surgery. There's scar tissue in there, and your anatomy has been moved around from, one of my surgeries was an esophagectomy where they actually removed most of my esophagus and pulled up my stomach.
Oh,
So
boy.
my anatomy has also been rearranged in there. So they were like, we cannot do it.
Wow.
So, and I apologize. There's so much to this story that it's a lot to take in and a lot to tell
You're
and
doing
talk
great.
about.
Yeah, no worries. You're doing great.
Um, so while all of that was happening, we were also in 2020. My husband and I had gotten married in 2018. By 2020, we were foster parents of a 3-day-old baby girl,
Wow.
um, who we would later adopt, who is now 5.
All right.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's great.
she's been a wonderful blessing. During that, though, we were still doing the binge drinking, going out with our friends, doing what we enjoyed, but then we stopped going out together because previously we had shared parenting. So there was an every other weekend situation where we were able to go out and be with our friends. And so those weekends we would go out and binge drink, and we would have, these terrible arguments over nothing because we were just drinking far too much. And so in addition to the problems with my health, we were having problems in our marriage that were leading to less than ideal parenting to kids who are home and deserve better. And also the drinking is contributing to my health,
Sure.
it's just not healthy.
And COVID was happening at that time too.
Exactly. So it was just, nothing good was coming from the situation. And I I had found, I mean, my doctors, I am very, very thankful. I had two doctors that worked very closely together to make, my healthcare plan to get me through when I was diagnosed with the gastroparesis and work me through the feeding tubes. And were just really there to advocate for me. That I don't know where I would have been if I wasn't able to find someone local to me to take care of it, because it was such an unknown disease that, like, when I got the diagnosis, it was just printed out on a sheet of paper. And when I asked the nurses, they were like, we don't really know.
Wow.
So I'm very grateful for that. But in about, so I would say fast forward to 2024, everything was about the same as far as my health was concerned. Still with a feeding tube. We had, all four kids, and we're married. I had opened up an insurance business for myself that was not doing, no, that was not 2024. I'm so sorry. I was just working in customer service at that point. And I had gone out drinking. And this was like the first time that something changed, is I drove drunk and caused property damage.
Oh, no.
And I didn't remember it. And I knew that was problematic, because I had always told myself that since I wasn't an alcoholic, it wasn't a problem, because I wasn't doing this daily. It wasn't something that I needed to do. If I couldn't go do it, I was fine. But the problem is I was drinking far too much. So that was a huge wake-up call. And on that day, we both decided to stop drinking completely. We have not drank ever since the day that happened in January of 2024.
Wow. Well, that's pretty remarkable.
It is.
Congratulations on that. That's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you. It's been something that's done a lot for our marriage, for us as parents, for our overall health, as far as how we feel and how we show up without a fog hanging over you. It's just allowed us to be a lot more present and involved. And with that, we started wanting more in different things. So that's when I actually then, that year in November, made a change to open my own insurance agency so that I could have more involvement in our kids' lives and have a little more freedom of time. Because our daughter was needing some additional treatments and therapies. She had some drug and alcohol exposure while her mom was pregnant that we were starting to see some behaviors on. So what I had learned historically from my health stuff was continuous appointments run you out of PTO. And when you run out of PTO, you kind of run into a major problem. And I knew that I couldn't do that for her. So I opened an insurance business. It did not go well. It was losing us money very quickly. And it was January of 2025, I had a friend invite me to a mom's meet at a church group. And I went to that, and there was just a lot of really nice people there. I kind of didn't have any real intention of anything else than just going to just meet people. She said, just come so you can not be alone all the time because you work by yourself. And I said, sure. Well, that week, my husband and I ended up going to church. And just since then, we have been continuing to move in our faith forward and seeing our lives improve as well. We've both started working out regularly. I don't know any of his numbers off the top of my head, but in June, I started exercising on a regular basis, and I have lost 30 pounds. I'm in the best shape that I've ever been in.
Wow.
I hadn't used my feeding tube I honestly don't know the last time I used it, because when you use it as needed, you don't really think of it as this is the last time I'm going to use. You just think I'll use it next time I use it.
Right.
But so I just had the tube, and one day in October, my tube fell out. And that was something that happened when, over time, the balloon would deflate or whatever, and it would just kind of fall out. So I called my surgeon's office, and they were not in. You only have so long to get it in. So I went to the ER to get it fixed. And it was a completely unremarkable visit, nothing to speak of. So left, went home, and that was that. And usually after they put in a new tube, there's a little bit of a recovery time with some discomfort, just because that tube has to settle. It's literally a foreign object in your body, and your body is not trying to keep it in.
Sure.
So it's a little uncomfortable, and I was dealing with that. It seemed like it was more than usual, but I was trying to talk myself out of that. Like, no, you just feel like that because it's happening right now. You're okay. It's all right. Because also, that as a patient, that historically, if you're calling a doctor's office, the response is going to be what I just said, that it's a foreign object and your body needs to get used to it.
Right, right.
And I knew how to care for the wound that it had created, and I knew how to, do all the things that I needed to do. But it had really just it had advanced so far. Like, the open wound from the stomach acid was quite large, and it was not healing. And it was almost as if the balloon was positioned wrong, because it just never stopped resisting against my stomach. And I was in so much pain, to the point that I was not sleeping. And so one night I just completely broke down. I remember I was in the bathroom, and I was trying to clean it up. I was looking in the mirror and trying to look and clean it. And I had never done this before, and I didn't know how to do it or what I was doing. And I was praying and crying. I had prayed before, but I had never prayed like this. And I just surrendered and told God that I begged him to take away my pain. I said, I give you everything. Please just take this pain away from me. Just meaning, please get this back to my normal.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple days later, I went to the surgeon's office. I called, and the nurse had agreed, sounds like the balloon is in there funny. Sometimes it can just sit wrong, and you're right, it can really leak all over. Why don't you come in and we'll switch it out? And I said, perfect, sounds good, I'll be there. So I get there, and the surgeon starts asking me all of these questions. And I was like, this is so strange. Like, usually there's not much talk, because it's very simple. They know what they're doing, and they leave.
Right. This is just a normal procedure that millions of people go through.
Right. Well, all of a sudden he said, why don't I just take it out? I was like,
All right.
because you can't. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, I can absolutely take it out. I was like, no, you can't. And I was explaining to him, like, why and how. And I this was probably such an ego shot to him. Like, I made him explain to me how he could do the surgery again if he took it out.
Same guy that told you not to take it out. Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber-only episodes that we offer to the supporters, and for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you.
Because it was the same team. That's why I was like, it was your partner that said. So I was
Right.
like, tell me how you would do it, because they said they couldn't do it. So
Right.
as if I have any control, but he entertained me. He answered me. And he took it out, and it's still out. It's almost completely healed. And I mean, I absolutely credit, that I stopped drinking and I lead a healthier lifestyle, but I also can't deny that a few days before that appointment, I gave everything to God and I asked him to take away the pain. And I meant just put my tube back to the discomfort, just that, because it's not comfortable to have a feeding tube. It's tolerable. It's something that you can certainly live with.
Sure.
And that's all I meant. But 2 days later, I had no pain. It was completely removed and healed. And I just can't explain that.
Wow. So do you think that the how much do you think the drinking really had to do with the cause of this disease? I mean, it seems like on some level that while you were drinking, it was really this giant problem. And then shortly after you stopped drinking, it began to sort of become less of a problem. And then, now that you've not been drinking for a while,
Yeah,
it's
I think the drinking and my emotional health, having a better understanding of where I am emotionally as well, is I think that helps me not have that desire to drink also.
right.
But I think it just helps to stay in a more positive mindset and a healthier mindset in general, because I think that makes a difference. If what you take in is what you're gonna put out.
Sure. So from the very beginning, when doctors were telling you that maybe you had some eating disorder, you had all these issues, do you think that that was really kind of the trauma that started this whole cycle, was being told by medical experts that you had this problem that you knew you didn't have, or was it something else?
There was a combination of things. I had a really complicated relationship with my parents, and at the age that I was when I started getting sick, I was looking for a kind of nurturing that I was not getting from them.
Mhm.
I don't know exactly what that was, right? I was 17, who knows?
Sure.
Um, it just was some sort of an unmet need. It was something that it was a combination of things, of a trying to be rebellious teenager, but also um I was sick. So how rebellious was I going to be? And you know, parents who were doing the best that they could, but certainly weren't perfect either. And life just gets messy sometimes. And on top of that, I was, I had my my oldest son when I was 20.
Okay.
So that was certainly not a traumatic event by any means, but it's
I don't
definitely
know.
life
I'd say that's a
changing.
pretty traumatic event for most people.
He
It's
was life
certainly a life
changing.
changer.
Yes, absolutely life changing.
So, as you've gone from where you were to where you are, is there maybe a central theme or some, what our listeners are going, wow, what a transformation, right? You've gone from this wreck of a life to sounds like you've got a pretty normal situation going on now by
Yeah.
most standards. So, um, things happened along the way, and the things that happened to you probably are things that happen to a lot of people in the sense of maybe not the exact causes or the exact scenarios, but things that you could correlate, and certainly the symptoms of going after bad relationships or not, you know, unhealthy lifestyles, unhealthy life choices, addictions, all of those things. It's as remarkable as your story is, it's also fairly common in the sense of
Yeah.
it's not a like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. It's a thing that happens
Right.
to a lot of people. And yet there's so many ways that people find their way through it. So what would you say would be your message to our listeners that say, hey, if you see yourself in this place or maybe even heading to this place, what would you say to these people that maybe could help them to either avoid or find their way through it?
I would say to really stop and focus on taking a look at what's close to you, not about looking at what it seems like you might be missing out on if you say no to going out to spend time with your friends or go to that party or go see that band or whatever the thing that everybody is doing that night. Think about what you're missing at home. Think about what you're walking away from. Think about how you might be missing a chance to grow your relationship with your kids or your spouse. Um, these are chances that you can make healthier choices for yourself and grow and better your relationships. And it's easier to do than you give yourself credit for. Uh, it really, and I'm not saying, oh my gosh, it's the easiest thing you've ever done. You'll do it, no problem, piece of cake.
Can do it.
But you can do it. You need to give yourself some credit. You need to hold yourself accountable. And you need to be real about who is in your circle. And the people that think that this is temporary, that this is something that you're not going to stick to, are not the people that you need to be holding you accountable. You need to find people who want you to win.
That's 100% true. Yeah. It's funny, your parents, at least my parents, always, gave me crap about people I was hanging around, and they would always,
Right?
you know, those people are no good for you. They're going to drag you down. Or, if I was hanging around a good person, they'd support that and say, yeah, you need to spend more time with this person. They're good for you. But it turns out that's very true. Who you surround yourself with is got a lot, you're influencing them, but they're influencing you as well. And whether that's supportive or destructive, really that's the thing that you should be aware of.
Exactly. It's really key. And looking beyond the surface and not just seeing like that, well, they invite me out. Like, okay, are they inviting you out because you're available and you say yes? And
Exactly.
because that's a big difference than would
Yeah,
they
they
say
really want
yes?
to spend time and share their life with you.
Right. Like, would they say yes if you invited them somewhere there wasn't drinking?
Exactly. Well, listen, Sarah, so many of our guests that, have gone through stories like this or, overcome obstacles, find their way to supporting other people, whether it's, counseling or setting up a website, or some people set up nonprofit, all sorts of different things. What are you doing with your experience?
So I actually have a business called Booked by Sara, where I set people up as guests on other people's podcasts.
Oh, nice.
Um,
We'll have to do
so
some more talking.
yeah, I actually am just really convicted about who I work with, and I only work with people that I feel like are doing things that are making a big difference and that their stories are impactful, so
Nice.
that when I'm scheduling them, then I feel like I'm making a difference and changing stories. And then I'm also using those same tools to myself go on podcasts and just share my story and see if there's anyone I can reach and anyone that I can help at all. And I'm going to slowly start adding that to my socials and stuff.
I love that. Yeah, it's funny. This podcast itself has been going on for about 3 years, and I did another one for about 10 years prior to that. That was more human rights issue oriented. But I really feel like we're building a community of people who are focused on improving their health, and that's, not just, people going through diseases and things like that, but spiritual healing, mental healing. I mean, every which way, it's all interconnected. A lot of holistic approaches, but I really feel like we're helping a lot of people this way.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many people that listen to podcasts now. I think they're such a great way to get the word out about different things and for people to find topics that are of their interests.
Well, how does somebody get a hold of you if they feel like they would be a good guest and they want to get out there and start hitting the podcast circuit?
You can go to my Instagram is booked by Sara K, or I have a LinkedIn also, Sara Kelsey.
Wonderful. And that's Kelsey.
Yes, it is an Sara.
Beautiful. Well, Sara, this has been a fascinating conversation. And as I mentioned before, I'd love to have you back as things progress and as your book by Sara starts to grow, and you're starting to build yourself in the healing community. I love to share that experience with you.
Wonderful. That sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Well, this has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and I want to thank all of our listeners for making this show possible. And we will see you next time. This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.